It's Monday. That means I had college this weekend. And we had 2 different classes. Saturday was a different class, Sunday was a different class. And what we talked about was ourselves. And we talked about triggers. What triggers us? What sets us off? And why it sets us off. It was 2 days of triggering content. And the first day was group process. And that's when we sit in a room and we basically spill our guts, and then we dissect our guts, and we do it publicly. There's 12 of us in the classroom, so we kind of go around from person to person and talk about whatever it is each person wants to talk to. And I talked about boundaries. I talked about my personal boundaries. I talked about my guilt around having boundaries and my ability to cut people off and whether or not that's healthy. And it was a really interesting exploration of what we need versus what we allow other people to do to us in order to get what we need. And over the last 1.5 years, I realized everything that I have been willing to give in order to get what I need. And that, shockingly, just by letting people do whatever they wanted and treat me however they want, and me responding in kind, hasn't got me what I needed at all. It is like the antithesis of how to get what you need. The way you get what you need is to set a boundary and expect that the people around you will respect it. And if they don't respect it, then you don't continue giving to them. And that is what I've learned this last year. So that's what we talked about in group process on day 1. And we talked about it for a long time. I felt like I took up a ton of space in class. And then I talked about how uncomfortable it was for me to take up space. And it was like, I said, I love attention. I love getting attention. Or I love the idea of attention. But then when I get attention, I immediately deflect. I immediately, like if someone is to give me attention, I get uncomfortable. So it's a really weird push and pull of like needing to have attention, needing people to look at me, and needing people to listen to me. So like needing to be seen and heard, but at the same time feeling extremely uncomfortable with it. So there was sort of a deep dive into why might it be that you're looking for attention, but attention actually makes you uncomfortable. And it was just something to think about. I mean, I don't have the answer to that, and I'm still like mowing through, why am I the way that I am? So that's like my journaling process for this week, and then my therapy tomorrow. There's so much therapy in my life, and I love it. I love it because I'm unraveling years of like shoving shit down and never looking at it and never thinking about it, but thinking that I am. So group process day was a lot of focus on me, a lot of focus on my problems. Like I said, I did feel guilty for taking the space up, but inevitably someone was going to take the space up. And, every time we talk in one of those group work things, everyone's learning from everyone else. So my issues are familiar to other people. Like the things that I'm experiencing, other people are experiencing too. So we're all sort of exploring these themes of trigger points and things that make us uncomfortable. And part of that work is to make sure that when we are counselors and therapists, that the things that come up in our clients are things that we've dealt with as well. Things that we're ready to face, things that we have already faced and aren't afraid, aren't triggered, aren't set off or wanting to hide behind something when those issues come up with our clients. And that's kind of what we talked about on day 2, because day 2 was actual counseling practice, which is where we go around the room and we get in groups of 3, and one of us is a counselor, one of us is a therapist, and then the third person observes those interactions. So we do like a 20-minute session, and right now we're just practicing with boundaries, which is boundary setting when you first see a client, which is sort of laying out the contract and saying, that you're a mandated reporter, and if any harm is going on, you're going to have to report it. And the, pricing, time, texting to tell us we're late, blah, blah, blah. Basically just like intake shit day 1. So we just have to sort of get that down. It's kind of like an elevator pitch. It's just like a maybe like 3 to 5 minute introduction where you go over everything with your client so they know what to expect. But then you also have to counsel people. From there, you have people that you have to deal with and their issues and stuff. So it was great because our tutor she's wonderful, and she set up all these different like scenarios for us. Like, she'd pull us aside. Each person who was a client got pulled aside and said, okay, this is the scenario that you're going to do. You're going to be really angry, or you're going to not stop talking about crazy things, or you're going to be like a belligerent child. Anyway, it was really good. And I was really in my head about it at first, about like, I gotta get this right. I have to be good at this. I have to be the best at this. That's always my thing. Like, I am a perfectionist in my core. And that's another thing that I'm trying to unravel from childhood. I mean, I kind of know where that came from. But I was able to settle into it and go, this is practice. This is supposed to go wrong. I'm supposed to be bad at this at first. I'm not supposed to be, as one of my classmates said, I'm not supposed to walk into the room and be Carl Rogers, who is the godfather of the kind of therapy that we're doing. Carl Rogers wasn't even Carl Rogers when he walked into the room. He had to become that over time. It's a process of becoming, and that's why it's a 4-year degree. The entire thing is how to become a psychotherapist. So that's the difference between this college that I'm in right now versus the college that I was in 20 years ago in America. 20 years ago in America, I had a psychology major at the University of Georgia, which was, I had to take math, I had to take science, I had to take biology, I had to take all sorts of shit. I never really dug my teeth into the place that I wanted to dig into, and so I kind of got distracted, and I ended up leaving. Whereas here, the entire emphasis, everything is all about psychotherapy. This is a direct line to becoming a therapist. That's the only reason people do this, is because they want to become a therapist. And so that's all we focus on, is how to be a good therapist. And I love it. And it is challenging. It is challenging because I've never been a therapist before. And this last year is my first time in therapy. So it's just learning and learning and learning. And therapy is such a different relationship. The therapist-client relationship is so completely different than the friend therapizing that I've been doing my whole life, right? So that's what I've always loved to do, is to listen to people's stories and kind of help, guide, and advise. And it's what I've always wanted to do, and it's how I ended up here in the first place. But it requires a completely different skill set, in that instead of, and I loved this is another thing our tutor said, was instead of being a rescue boat, you have to be a lighthouse. So be a lighthouse, not a rescue boat. And for that means you're just reflecting the light. You're just showing, here's what it could be. Here's where the safe harbor is. You're just being a safe harbor for these people's ideas, for their thoughts, for their fears, for their anxieties, for everything that's going on inside of them. But you cannot save them. That's not what a therapist does. A therapist doesn't save. A therapist listens and reflects back and provides a mirror for people to see themselves in, so that they can understand what it is they're seeing through a different pair of eyes. And I think it's a totally beautiful relationship, and I'm really, really happy and grateful that I get to go through this. But it is also exhausting. It is exhausting to go through these things. Day one knocked me out. Like, I was totally exhausted. And when we talked about it in class, I realized that I had sort of gone home and gone into robot mode, which is how I described it. Like, I went into, and I didn't know this until the professor or the tutor was talking to someone else in class, I was dissociating. And that's what I've done forever, instead of feeling my feelings. So it's learning how to feel your feelings and identifying what's going on in your body. And I just have so much work to do, but I'm so grateful for where I am. Bye.